Fáilte go dtí Folklore Friday with myself, Lora O'Brien. You can find more on loraobrien.ie where you can join my mailing list. But for now, we are going to take a little look. I am up to my eyes this week in the Royal Sites of Ireland, because that is the class that I'm teaching on Sunday. So I'm looking over my notes and making sure that I have my presentation right and, getting all my material together and, getting all my ducks in a row, as they say. So I wanted to have a look today. It just occurred to me, one of the Royal Sites, the Royal Site of Leinster, that doesn't get a lot of love is Knockaulin or Dunolin. And there has been some archaeological excavation, which we go into in the class and exactly what the site was for and all the rest of it. But I just wanted to have a quick look, as we're doing Folklore Friday, at the, let me share my screen, sorry. At the, if I did a search in duchas.ie for Knockaulin. Now, Knockaulin is the English term for Dunolin. And what I wanted to actually kind of go through was not even so much the information that's in it. Like there's a lot of folklore around a lot of places, and particularly what you'll see is that when there's interesting places in a locality, or that there's kind of a story, an interesting story that is passed down through the ages, you'll find it ascribed to great well-known characters. So it must have been Queen Maeve who did that, or that was Cuchulainn, or that was Fionn McCool, or whoever, right? And there is definitely a lot of that. But what I wanted to look at when we do this search for Knockaulin, we get 32 transcripts and 3 stories, which are included in these transcripts as well, all from County Kildare. So that's the county that the site is in, right? So what I wanted to do was not even go into all of them, but to just kind of give you an overview of it, because it's really important when you're dealing with Irish folklore mythology, like, to understand that it is an oral tradition, okay? So you can't look at one story and take it as complete, source fact, and that's it. What you have to do is really kind of dig into the pattern of what the stories are telling you, and go through a lot of the different stories around this kind of topic. As I said, there's 32 search results for this. So what are the patterns? What are the common threads that kind of weave through all this? And what we'll see as we're looking through it is that there's common threads that weave through all the stories. So the search for hidden treasure is one. There's blank off the top of my head, but yeah, the mentions of Fionn and the Fianna. Those are common for a lot of different places and a lot of different stories. Because hidden treasure captures everybody's attention, and Fionn and the Fianna got around. So what we're going to see, though, is, as I said, these kind of common threads. So as we're looking down through the stories, we have the first instance here of, on Knockaulin, there was a large stone which Fionn McCool threw from Ailinne, so that's the hill of Ailinne in Tara, to Knockaulin. Now that's a good old distance to be thrown a stone, I have to say. And it broke when he landed. So 4 miles from Kilcullen there, oh no, that's Stone Monument, right? So that's one reference to throwing a stone. And Knockaulin was the dwelling place of Fionn and the Fianna, so we have a connection with Fionn and the Fianna again, but saying that they lived there. Now, Fionn and the Fianna were not really supposed to have kind of lived anywhere. They would move around the country basically on their hunting parties, and they were almost kind of nomadic, but they would overwinter different places and all the rest of it. So the Hill of Ailinne is definitely connected to them, and here's another connection through Knockaulin. So the people said that Fionn threw a stone from the hill of Ailinne to Knockaulin, and the marks of his 5 fingers are on it. Then fairy forts, and they're talking about fairy forts, and it says a very famous place is Knockaulin. It was once the home of Fionn McCool, so that's another reference to it being his home, and the foundation of the house is still there. Now that's interesting, because that's kind of people looking at archaeology and trying to kind of make sense of what they're seeing in the landscape, right? On Knockaulin there is a stone which Fionn McCool threw from the hill of Ailinne. His finger marks are on the stone. Stone is at the bottom of the hill above Dempsey's house. Now that's an interesting one because you've got the finger marks of Fionn McCool. So obviously there's an odd shaped stone which is around Knockaulin. And people say that this is how it got there. Fionn McCool lived on Knockaulin occasionally with the Leinster Fianna. Okay, so that's interesting because there's the Leinster Association specifically there. How Knockaulin came to be spindle covered. This is one of those stories, and this is a fairy story. So widow, leprechaun, and getting tricked by a leprechaun basically, and the hill was covered with spindles. This type of plant. Something about the English and praying to God, I think that story goes into. So now the Irish fighting the English soldiers is another very, very common theme that comes up across all the counties really. And this is an interesting one now. If you go over to Knockaulin, you will see the stone with the footprints on it. Every night he's seen sitting on it about midnight. So this is kind of a ghost story. Now, one of the things that when I was reading about the story of the finger marks on the stone, one of the things that I was reminded of is that there are inauguration stones around the country. And they all have these kind of indentations in it. Some of them look like footprints. Some of them look like, they're kind of river stones or something, and they look like somebody's literally dragged their giant fingers through it. And so that's a connection between the footprints and the finger marks. And also, a connection to leadership as well, which can't really go unnoticed. Long ago when the Fianna were in Ireland, their leader Fionn McCool lived on the hill of Ailinne, again at Tara. One day he jumped from the top of the hill to the bottom and he landed on a great big stone. With the force of his jump, his feet were planted in the stone. He picked up the stone and threw it from the hill of Ailinne to Knockaulin. So there's another one where it's not a fingerprint but a footprint again. And the idea of a king or a leader putting their foot in the stone. I mean, we hear about it most famously with the Leah Fall that's at Tara. But most of the inauguration stones around the country, they would have had the tribes that ruled in the various regions around the country. They all would have had their own inauguration stone, their own king stones. And they all had these indents in them. So usually it was that you would put a foot on it and the stone would cry out or would sing under the rightful king. So this one says, a big stone on the top of a hill called Knockaulin between Ballysacks and Old Kilcullen is said by P. Moran of Ballysacks Hills to have been thrown there from Fionn McCool from the hill of Ailinne. Now here's another one here. There are stones on the hill of Knockaulin in remembrance of dead people. There's a stone with names cut into it. It is said that a man cut his name into it before he died. That could be a reference to Ogham stones. Let's see, does that come up again? Big hill near Knockaulin, Holy Wells. So this is our first holy well. There is another well on Knockaulin Hill. It is called St. John's. Then the stone with his 5 fingers. Then another one with the Holy Well. Small well named St. John's. Its water is a great cure for any skin disease. So this is where we start getting into what the healing well at Knockaulin or Dunallen is said to cure. Local fairy stories, Fionn McCool throwing the stone. The hill on Knockaulin, there's a hole, and they say it's Brian Borew's kitchen because Brian Borew made it. Now, Brian Borew is another great ancestral figure in the landscape. So Fionn and Brian Borew would be two of kind of the major tribal ancestral entities, the ungods, if you like. And so that's an interesting one to note, again, in relation to leadership being associated with Dunallen, Just a mention of Knockaulin there. Holy Wells, St. John's at Knockaulin Hill. The well is in the side of the hill. It can cure lame people. So we have skin diseases and lame people. And another well, it cures warts in Knockaulin, St. John's Well. And Knockaulin, St. John's Well, if anyone washes their face in it, they will never get disease. So kind of a general cure-all there. Let's go to the next page and see what we have. Local monuments. On Knockaulin is a stone vault called the Cook House, which is lined with stones. Now, Brian Boru's cooking pit and this cook house, I'm going to guess that there is a Fullocht Fia up there, which is an old pit lined with stones. And they would have been regularly associated with Fionn na Fianna or Brian Boru or any leaders who were out on, you know, military campaigns, basically, because it was supposed to be for outdoor cooking, right? So that's another connection. Fled across Knockaulin, Holy Wells. If a person washes his face in it on St. John's Eve, he will never be deceased. So that's St. John's Well and St. John's Eve. St. John's Eve kind of took over from Midsummer. So that there's healing traditions in the Midsummer water is a point to note as well. Never be deceased. So immortality is from that well. That's an interesting one. Well called St. John's. The well is there still, and it also has cures. Sorry, now reading this out. Another well on the hill of Knockaulin, there's also a cure if any person has any skin disease. So another vote for skin disease is there. We have split in two pieces and the mark of his 5 fingers on the stone. More leprechauns associated. Mark of his 5 fingers. Cure warts. No, wait, that's a different one. Knockaulin Hill, there is a well of St. John's. If you wash yourself in it, it will cure some skin disease. So another vote for skin disease. If you count your warts, another warts association. If you count your warts and put the same amount of stones in a bag, drop them at a crossroad, and the first person who opens the bag gets the warts. Now that last bit there would be a very common folk cure for warts, folk magic cure for warts, which basically passes the affliction on to the next person. So that is probably not connected with the well specifically, although the fact that they're kind of being brought up in side by side like that, and the fact that there was another, you can see where these kind of threads all weave together a little bit, you know. There's a giant stone on the hill of Knockaulin, which was thrown by Fionn McCool from the hill of Ailinne about 12 miles away. Marks of his 5 fingers are on it. At the top of Knockaulin Hill, there is a stone with Fionn McCool's fingerprints on it. On Knockaulin, there's a well called St. John's Well. If you wash your face in it on St. John's Eve, you will be cured of skin disease. So again, another St. John's Eve and skin disease vote. And here we have the meaning of Knockaulin. So Knockaulin or Knockaulin is a hill situated near Old Kilcullen, which means the hill of beauty, owing to the magnificent scenery from its summit. So we see that that is something that's appreciated locally as well. So basically, when I'm looking at a site and trying to kind of build relationship with site, this is what I do. I go through, see what's in the folklore, see what's on, you know, from here then, or vice versa. I might go to archaeology.ie, which I have looked at in different videos. I'll put a link at the end to a video that I did in response to somebody asking about what to do if they're moving into a property and there's a fairy fort or a rath on their land and how to kind of build relationship there. So I did a video about that, and I'll put a link to that at the end. So do stay till the end, nearly at the end. But what I want you to do is go to Dúchas and find out what, you know, any site that you're interested in. Go to Dúchas and just do what we've done here. Do a little search and look for the patterns in it. And what I find then is what we've got is a stone that's possibly an inauguration stone. We have a well. We have, what was the other one? A Fulloch Fia. And then whatever other archaeology is in the area. So now when I go to look at the archaeology, again, with this in mind, I'll be able to match up those patterns and kind of, you know, cross-connect some of the information and start to build a picture so that I can build a better relationship with this particular sacred site. So if you want to learn more about the royal sites of Ireland, we will be exploring it in a whole class, which I'm running live on Sunday, but if you're watching afterwards, you can definitely catch it on the download at the irishpaganschool.com. So do go and check that out, and I will see you in the next video. We do a Folklore Friday every Friday, and we have Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are when I release videos on the channel. So do check it out and subscribe and hit the bell and all that good stuff, okay? Slán go fóill.